Good evening, good evening, good evening. Happy Saturday evening. It is Saturday Night Live, y'all. Oh my God. It is Saturday Night Live, y'all. And I just said, oh my God, today, after this, I did my live this morning, my morning prayer and just sharing some interesting things, what I'm going to talk about today. And, oops. And what I wanted to talk about is how it's so hard to recognize unidentified mental illness. Unidentified mental illness, and this is a case study. For me, it's a case study. Being that I'm mandated by the work that I do, if I recognize anything of child abuse, I am to report it. So it's good to keep that skill, that craft where you have to recognize how you can save a child that you can see that they are in danger. Um, these mothers that have these children are so good at covering it up or playing like there's nothing's really wrong, like they're doing the best job ever as a parent. And I always say a single parent household is very dangerous. Very dangerous for any woman to be left alone to raise a family. And we don't see it in society because it became so normal in the American culture, especially in the black American culture, especially for black American people. That when these women decided that they were going to gain welfare and get rid of their spouses or the fathers of their children, they thought it would be more easier to get rid of the man and try to hold up a family by themselves. And then there's other things that women think is also cool to do. Like they have children in a marriage with their husband and they become sort of like their husbands take them somewhere to isolate them from their village, like take them away from their mothers and their fathers and their sisters or whatever. Whenever you see anything going in that direction in a marriage, those are red flags as well. Why is he wanting? Hey, Frankie, glad you here, sis. Yeah. Why would he want her away from their family? Like, you become like, oh, he isolates you. He'll take you somewhere where you don't have nowhere to be around your sister, your brother, your mother, your father, and so on and so on. And sometimes another thing that we started to do without having traditional marriages, like certain things like the husband is introduced to the family or before you start even dating and courting this man, it's good that he will be able to come to meet your parents. And if there is a father in the household, he can actually either okay for you to be with his daughter or not. And if she does it on her own, then you know how that is. In the olden days, that's what they did. They would not allow their daughters to date a man if the father never had a chance to meet him. The father had to meet this character before he would allow his daughter to be with him. Just in case, because men, it's easy for a man to know another man and recognize something about that man that is not of him to treat his daughter right. So it's always been a time when before you can go out on a date, your father had to actually meet this character. I know, well, my dad died when I was too young to date. Okay, I was still very, very young. So I do remember some things because he died when I was like maybe 12. And at that age, that wasn't allowed to be dating at 12 years old. But I remember my father, my oldest sister would, she was the oldest. So she um, was had to bring her date to um I remember my father, she had to bring her date so my father could see who the boy was or know something about his life, about his family, whatever. I swear to you not, in those days. And I'm going back in I'll say like, late 70s or whatever like that, because my dad died around 78, 77, 78, whatever. But I could remember, some things. And that's how the olden days were. If you wanted to date, in the age that your parents would allow you to go out and date is at 16. Go to the movies with the boy. He has to have you back home at a certain time. It wasn't no you going out and sleeping around with no boy or anything of that nature. And if you did, you did. But there was some sort of kind of rules and, oh, excuse me, things that were done in a certain type of way for a reason to protect her. That's when you say the man was the protector over his family. Like he will know if this guy is serious or if this guy is just want to play around with his daughter. That's how it was done in those days. That's when you remember you heard shotgun weddings and all of that other stuff back in the days. All right. Now, and in those days, you really would have situations like this go on. This is why. This is why, like, what we're going to watch about this young lady who killed her children, murdered her children. Everything about this lady looks normal. The kids look right. She look right. She's not a bad looking woman. She's a nice looking woman. Um, and everything, but there was something silent and being unidentified in her mental, her mind, in her mind. You see, because women, when they give birth to children, it's some things that go on in the things called their hormones. In the pituitary, your hormones, and then some things go on in the change of your life, because when you give in life to something, you take it, something about your life is changing. When you give in birth, it explains all of that in the Bible anyway, but I'm just going to do the best I can to try to explain it on how people can really understand that this woman, she said, she when we hear the story about everything that happened, now this happened like 3 something years ago, but still, it's still going on today. A lot of young women out there, they have kids, and the next thing you know, they end up suicidal, or they do something like they kill the man, they kill the children. Like one did that. I think this was sometime last year during the eclipse, and she went off the face of the earth. She killed her man. After she killed the man, she got the children, put them in the vehicle with her, drove on some highway, and this happened somewhere, I think, in California, in one of those, like, out there in that part of, Southern California somewhere. And after she killed the man, she took her two children, put them in the car, 8-year old, and I forgot how old was the youngest one. Put them on a highway. Okay, one was an infant, an 8-month-old infant, I think it was, and her daughter. I forgot how old the daughter was, about 8 years old, an 8-month-old infant, something like that. Put them on the highway and let the cars hit them. I think the baby died. I don't know. I'm not too sure about the older one. I think that one survived, but the baby didn't live. Okay? The baby didn't live because you couldn't see the baby when the cars already ran over the baby. So the baby died. Horrible. Disgusting. Then she went and got the car and drove herself into a building or something like that. And that's how she succumbed to her death. But just the crazy stuff you will hear about these women that take this not only happening black women, but it has happened a lot in white women as well. Women in general. We're just gonna say women in general when it comes to children. And why it's dangerous for any woman to be a single mother. And if she do choose to be a single mother, she should never be left really single, alone. Hear what I'm saying? It's very dangerous for a young woman who might have had even if she had one child. It's very dangerous for a woman to be left alone with her children. And she's single. It could happen even if she's married. There has been some women who suffered with postpartum depression, and while their husbands was at work, all kind of things just went through their mind because their hormones and their minds they changing, and they just go through something on the mental level of their life, and they get so depressed, postpartum depression, that they end up doing some things to harm the baby's crying too loud. They not used to waking up at night giving the baby a bottle. They get depressed. They life is changing. They men might not find them attractive anymore. They not as sexy anymore. It's a whole lot of things going on with them. Okay, that's why it's very very dangerous for any woman to be left alone during her pregnancy. I mean, not pregnancy, during raising children. That's why a lot of times, like when my sister had my niece, right, when she first had her first child, all the matriarchs in my family were involved. My mother, my grandmother, and my aunt. You hear what I'm saying? My mother, my grandmother, and my great aunt. It was like three women that was around my sister during the time of her with that baby. She was never allowed to be alone, like alone. Like someone was always around her to help her, the elders, because of the things that this young mother is going through. Those things are taught in the Bible. And people don't realize that we try to do things on our own, but it's not the way it's supposed to be. You can't be left alone as a woman raising a family. So let's go into the video. I'm gonna let y'all look at the video, and then I'm gonna give you some more of my, you know, content.
Baltimore is a city in Maryland known for its rich history, beautiful waterfronts, and lively neighborhoods. With a population of over 600,000 people, it's a city full of contrasts. It was in one of these neighborhoods on Coventry Road that a tragedy occurred, shattering the peace that many had taken for granted. Danira and Davin were two innocent children, just 6 and 8 years old, who brought light and joy wherever they went. They lived with their mother, Jamira Hall, who seemed to be raising them on her own. Not much was known about the father, who didn't appear to be involved in their day-to-day lives. From the outside, the family looked like they were doing fine. They lived a simple life, one where the children were often seen playing or spending time with their grandparents. But it wasn't just their smiles that drew people in, it was their kindness. For the neighbors, the children were a joy to have around. They were polite and well-mannered, the kind of kids anyone would be proud of. They loved playing outside and often waved at neighbors with cheerful smiles. Everyone in the community loved these children. They often visited their grandparents, Hall's parents, who adored them. The bond they shared as a family seemed unbreakable. Their grandparents were their safe. For Hall, being a single mother wasn't easy, but she seemed determined to give her children the best life she could. But then, something changed. It wasn't always this way. You see, Jamira Hall had a troubled history, one that was often ignored. It all started with cracks that no one seemed to notice. Cracks that eventually shattered into a tragedy that shook everyone. Hall, who was only 28 at the time, had a past that was anything but ordinary. Her life was marked by moments that should have raised alarms, but somehow those moments slipped by, unnoticed or ignored. In 2018, Hall's actions shocked her family. She was charged with arson and child endangerment after setting fire to her parents' apartment. But it wasn't a simple mistake or an accident. Hall had disabled the smoke detectors, burned family photos, and left with her two children. Danira and Davin were inside the apartment when the fire started, their lives put at risk by their own mother. This moment should have changed everything for Hall and her children. It could have been a turning point, a chance for intervention, but instead, Hall was sentenced to just 1 year in prison. By 2019, Hall was back in court, filing for custody of Danira and Davin. Their father attended the hearing but didn't respond to the proceedings. It was the silence that granted Hall custody of the children. Could someone who had endangered her children so recklessly be trusted to care for them again? For a time, it looked like Hall had turned things around. She was a single mother raising two young children, trying to provide for them. In quarantine during the pandemic, she recorded a podcast with her kids. It seemed lighthearted, filled with jokes and laughter. But even in those moments, there were signs, hints that something wasn't quite right.
I have two little mini-me's tonight. This evening I have
Danira Thomas Joy.
And I have
Devin Thomas.
Her words, though playful on the surface, hinted at stress and frustration.
Y'all been driving me crazy. But I love y'all.
I too.
Okay?
Looking back, those moments feel haunting, as if she was trying to keep her struggles hidden behind a mask of normalcy. Neighbors, however, noticed things that didn't add up. Hall's behavior grew more erratic over time. Arguments could often be heard coming from her apartment, day and night. She was seen sitting in a car with her children for hours on end, sometimes accompanied by a man. But then the man disappeared, and the children were left sitting by a stump, looking lost and unhappy. Right at that moment, it should have been clear that something was terribly wrong. One neighbor recalled seeing Hall throw away her children's beds shortly before the tragedy. Others mentioned how the children's smiles had faded. They no longer looked like the bright, cheerful kids the community loved. These were red flags that shouldn't have been ignored, but they were. Until August 24th, 2021, when everything came crashing down. That day, neighbors reported a foul smell coming from Hall's apartment on Coventry Road in southwest Baltimore. It was the kind of smell that couldn't be ignored. When a maintenance worker entered the apartment, What he found would haunt him forever.
I'm just shocked. Nothing happens in this neighborhood. This is quiet. Nothing happens at all.
Danira and Davin, just 6 and 8 years old, were found lifeless. Their condition was devastating. Danira was discovered in the bathtub with clear signs of strangulation. On the other hand, Davin was found in a sleeping bag with a knife in his chest. From their appearance, their bodies had already begun to decompose, a gruesome confirmation that this tragedy had unfolded days earlier. The discovery of Danira and Davin's lifeless bodies on August 24th, 2021, left a community shattered and searching for answers. 2 young children, full of innocence and potential, had been taken too soon. But the heartbreaking question was, why? How could something so horrific happen to such beautiful souls? And where was their mother, the person meant to protect them most? The investigation began, but it wasn't long before the chilling truth started to surface. 5 days earlier, on August 19th, neighbors had heard screams coming from the apartment. One cry stood out, a desperate, haunting plea. "Mommy, no."
Some of the details you're about to hear are disturbing. Keith Daniels joins us more right now with what neighbors are saying. Keith?
It shook Ray Cherry from his sleep.
I heard the kids around 11:30.
He says screams of children and tussling that night seeped through his floor from the apartment below.
Whoever was down there was picking these kids up and they was crying. And one kid said, "Mommy, no, Mommy. No, Mommy." And I heard a little boy through the floor was kind of crying. And right after that, I didn't hear anything else. I'm weeping because the kid, she didn't have to kill them kids. She didn't have to do it.
It was a cry no one could forget, and it painted a terrifying picture of what might have happened that night. What followed was a discovery that changed everything for the community. The details were too much to bear. Neighbors who had last seen the children alive and seemingly happy were left in disbelief. Authorities quickly realized that finding Hall was the main suspect in the case.
We can confirm now that the mother, 28-year-old Jamara Hall, is the suspect in this case, having confessed to murdering her children.
It was a race against time to uncover the truth. The search for her intensified as detectives worked tirelessly to trace her movements. And then came the breakthrough. Hall was tracked to an Uber heading toward Baltimore County. Right at that moment, it was clear she was trying to flee. On August 25th, just 1 day after the children were discovered, Hall was located and arrested by members of the Regional Auto Theft Task Force. The arrest marked a turning point, but it was also just the beginning. And so, she was brought in for questioning. The officers might have expected her to deny everything, perhaps claiming she didn't know what had happened or that she wasn't even there. But what she did next was completely unexpected. Hall didn't try to deflect or deny. Instead, she confessed to the unthinkable. She admitted to killing her own children. What drove her to commit such a horrific act? The investigation revealed more troubling details. Hall had told different stories to different people in the days leading up to her arrest. To her own mother, she claimed the children were with their father, but the father, heartbroken and confused, told the police he hadn't seen them. Instead, he had seen Hall wandering the streets, shouting and cursing, appearing intoxicated or under the influence of something. The more investigators learned, the clearer it became that there were signs all along, signs that something wasn't right. Hall's troubled past, including her 2018 arson conviction, painted a picture of a woman struggling with deep-seated issues. She had set fire to her parents' apartment while her children were inside, putting their lives in danger. And yet, after serving a 1-year sentence, she regained custody of the kids. How was Hall allowed to have her children back after such a serious offense?
They should have furthered the investigation because you set your own house on with your kids in it. So CPS should have took my opinion, CPS should have took the kids right away.
As the case moved forward, the focus shifted to understanding Hall's mindset. After her arrest, Hall faced 2 counts of first-degree murder, alongside charges.
So actually, What they're saying is that that's right there was a sign right there. Those children should have never ever been in her custody after she had took photos, burnt them up, and then on top of that, tried to set the house on fire. And the house she was setting on fire was in a relative house. I think her mother's house. That's what, from what I got from this here in this video. From the last video I heard, it didn't mention anything about her setting her mother's house on fire. It just said she set the house on fire. They wasn't too detailed. This is a lot more detailed. Now I get it. Those children should never have ever been back in her custody. And if they were, it had to be supervised. It should have been supervised. She should have never been able to regain custody of those children and be able to live out on her own. Not after when she already attempted, made an attempt before. Okay, this is what I get now from this video, because look at this woman. She's not a bad looking woman. You look at the children, everything about her seems normal on the outside. On the outside of her life, everything seems so normal. The kids are well kept. The kids are cute. She's on social media. She's having, like a lot of parents be doing, and I think it's disgusting when they be putting their kids on social media. I just don't. There's just some things about your life you should keep private on social media, because you don't know what kind of people are watching your social media page, stalking you and trying to get your information. They could come and do some harm. So you got to be very careful about putting your children on social media. I see a lot of women be doing that. It is just like, it sickens me. But anyway, back to this lady here, Jamira Hall, because this is like a case study, her unidentified mental illness. Those children should have never, ever, ever been back in her care. And if they were, this woman should have never been left alone with those children. There should have been somebody assigned to her. It should have been even a what they call a visiting nurse, or some type of person that you have to have for a couple of hours during the daytime, just to make sure that every day they check on you. They come and see about you every day. I know one of my sisters, she has one. They come, they make sure you taking your meds. They make sure that you walking your kids are going to school. They sit with you for I mean, they give you that services through, I don't know. I don't know how she was getting her income. This woman could have been working. You know what I'm saying? She might have had some type of job or whatever like that, and the kids were in child care, or before and after care or whatever. Who knows? But still, in all, when they released her from that prison, knowing that she had been in jail for attempting, like, setting arsonists and everything, and she had small children in the house, what they should have did is they should have never let her go have those kids without supervision. Every day somebody was checking on her. Every day somebody was making sure she was taking her meds. Because my sister has somebody that comes and see about her every day. And my sister enjoys it because she has company in the house with her all the time that goes shopping with her. Because my sister has some kind of surgery done on her knee. So she can't really like get around and do a lot of stuff by herself without some kind of support and without some assistance. So it's a person that comes in. She get a home health care, what they call them again. They come and they assist her with things, and they get to sit down there, and she gets to help her cook and, you know, things of that, things that they do, such as things like that. They get them for a couple of hours a day, and they come like every day, like on the job. They get them a couple of hours a day, like a case manager, somebody to sit with them, and that's what she should have had for with her with those children. She shouldn't have never been allowed to stay alone all day and every day with those kids. Because this right here could have been avoided. Or this could have been some way that these kids could have been placed somewhere else. And she could have got the mental health treatment that she needed. And she still shouldn't be left alone because once you got mental illness, it doesn't go away. Mental illness is mental illness. The mind is a sickness. It's a sickness. And she needs some kind of medicine. She needs to be on some meds to control things like hearing voices or just whatever her mental illness, whatever diagnosed mental illness she has, paranoid, schizophrenic, bipolar, whatever. Well, anyway, let's go on.
Of first-degree assault and reckless endangerment. It was a heavy list of accusations, but no heavier than the grief carried by the family of the two young victims. As the investigation came to an end, the next chapter was about to begin. Hall's trial would soon start, and with it, the hope of finding answers. But for those who loved Danira and Davin, no verdict would ever bring them back.
Their neighbor, who did not want to be identified, says her own daughter and Danira were best friends.
Danira and my daughter would play in the hallway,
calling Jamira an attentive mother. That neighbor says this spray paint on the grass is from where Jamira recently painted a table for her kids.
It was beautiful. It was like the blue sky, the beautiful blue sky with the white clouds.
Now the family's neighbor wonders how she'll tell her daughter that her best friend is gone.
I have no clue how I'm going to explain this to my baby. Because she played with them every day.
In late August 2021, Hall appeared before the court. She was held without bond, her public defender arguing for a competency evaluation to assess her mental state. A judge approved the request, scheduling another review for early September. But even as legal proceedings moved forward, the pain and anger surrounding the case only grew. For Theodore Thomas, the children's paternal grandfather, the heartbreak was unbearable. He and his wife had cared for Danira and Davin for a time after Hall's earlier legal troubles in 2018. It was a safe and loving environment for the children, but then something changed. Child Protective Services returned the children to Hall's care after her arson conviction. This moment, one that should have been a fresh start for Hall, ultimately set the stage for tragedy. For Thomas, the system had betrayed the children it was meant to protect. He voiced his frustration, questioning how they could have been taken from his care, only to end up in such a horrific situation. But on the other hand, the Maryland Department of Human Services remained silent, citing confidentiality laws. This silence, although legal, left lingering questions and fueled public outrage. By June 2022, the case had become even more complicated. Conflicting medical reports created uncertainty about Hall's mental state. While Hall claimed to suffer from psychosis, doctors determined she did not have a psychotic disorder. Instead, they believed she was faking her symptoms. This revelation changed everything for the case, casting doubt on her defense's plea of not criminally
How could somebody be faking their symptoms when they mentally ill? You know, you don't take that lightly. You know what I'm saying? Like, who would say she faking or something? I would have put her ass on medication anyway, fake or no fake. And I would have made sure some kind of medical doctor, somebody that was a visiting nurse or whatever would have been sitting with her for a couple of hours a day. I would have had to put a case manager on her or somebody for a couple of, especially when they got children. I would not have taken a woman who's actually committed arson and put people's lives in danger with arsoning, a fire, setting a fire, purposely setting a fire, because her mind ain't working, functioning well. And she was already put in jail. With that time, they should have been putting her on meds. Okay? She shouldn't never went to jail. She should have went to some kind of get some psychiatric treatment for her mental health. That's what she needed. She didn't need jail. See, this is how messed up the system is. She needed mental health treatment, not jail. Nobody died from the fire. So what they could have done is put her ass in a mental health facility, a rehabilitation program, get her mind to regulate and to function well. And then from there, they could have assigned somebody to come and make sure they on the scene and visiting nursing or whatever, visiting nurse, or somebody to be with her during the day or whatever, so she wouldn't bring any harm to herself or to those children. So actually, the system failed this woman. And then somebody said there was a man in the car, but we gonna let's let it go on. Let me find out some more. If she had some kind of man crate like that other lady that killed her kids in the car, the white woman, the Susan. And then there's another story called Small Sacrifice with Farrah Fawcett in it. I forgot the lady's name that took her kids, and because the boyfriend or whatever like that didn't want no kids, so she thought by getting rid of her children would have been able to free her from that problem, and she can get into this relationship with this man that she was so madly in love with. Okay. Well, why didn't you just give the kids over to the father? That's if you want to go on with your life in a new relationship, just give the kids over to the father and just go on with your life. Same thing with this one. I think that is so selfish. Instead of her just like saying to the system and everything, look, mentally, I'm not well enough to take care of my kids on my own. I'm not getting no support. I need the support from the father of the children. Since he's not giving me no support, I would, we could go to fight in custody, whatever, do what you got to do. Maybe she was getting support. Maybe she was getting those financial, what they call child support checks. And being that she was getting the caregivers. Yeah, that's what they call Frankie caregivers. Yeah, they should just send a caregiver to the house for those kids. Somebody to come and take the kids to school for her. Somebody to just take some of the pressure off of her of raising those kids in that house alone by herself. Because that's when the devil creeps in. That young mother should never have been left alone after that incident with the fire. Should have never been left alone with those kids. And I think that the system did fail her.
Responsible. But this wasn't the end of the story. Hall's defense attorneys argued that she needed proper medical care, access to specific medications, and a chance to address her mental health. They painted a picture of a woman in desperate need of help, someone who had been failed by a system unable to provide the support she needed. The court allowed Hall to remain hospitalized for treatment, while her legal team continued to fight for her. Yet, the judge ultimately ruled that Hall was competent to stand trial. It was a decision that shifted the focus back to the legal battle ahead, but it left doubts about what could have been done to prevent the tragedy in the first place. From the arguments heard by neighbors to Hall's erratic behavior and troubled past, the signs were there, but no one acted in time. Baltimore's mayor called for a thorough review of the case, urging investigators to close the gaps in the system that allowed such a tragedy to happen. But for many, these calls for change felt too late. The damage had already been done. By November 2022, the case had inched closer to trial. A court hearing discussed potential plea deals, but nothing concrete had been offered. Both the prosecution and defense awaited further evaluations of Hall's mental health, and each side prepared for what would undoubtedly be a long and emotional trial. Initially, a trial date was set for December 5th, 2022. However, logistical issues delayed the proceedings. Hall couldn't attend due to transportation problems from the Maryland Correctional Institute for Women. Therefore, the hearing was rescheduled, but even that date seemed uncertain. As the delays mounted, the court and public grew restless. Everyone wanted answers, but they were still waiting. Throughout this time, Hall's mental health became the focus of heated discussions. The defense argued that she was not criminally responsible for her actions, citing her history of delusions and hallucinations. This moment changed everything for the case. The defense needed to prove Hall's mental illness, while the prosecution believed her actions were driven by anger, not psychosis. They pointed to Hall's strained relationships with her children's father and her own mother, as well as her financial stress. But until these evaluations were resolved, the trial remained in limbo. In mid-2023, the court began to push for progress. Judge Melissa Finn expressed her frustration with the constant delays, urging both sides to move forward. She scheduled a hearing for August 4th, during which a trial date was finally set for October 2nd, 2023. The defense estimated the trial would last around 10 days. It seemed like the case was finally gaining momentum, but right at that moment, another delay hit. The Maryland Electronic Courts MDEC system rollout caused the court to close on key dates, pushing the trial to June 2024. The delays frustrated many, but they also gave both sides more time to gather evidence and expert opinions. By April 2024, Hall pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of first-degree child abuse. Alongside this plea, she maintained her defense of being not criminally responsible. The prosecution opposed the NCR plea, pointing to evidence that suggested Hall's actions were premeditated. But then, the crime scene itself told a disturbing story. Investigators found signs that Hall had planned to set her apartment on fire to cover up the murders. A letter about her custody issues was discovered at the scene, hinting at the weight of her struggles. But even with this evidence, the defense argued that Hall's mental state was the driving force behind her actions. By June 2024, the court reached a decision. Based on medical recommendations, Hall was found not criminally responsible for the murders of her children. She was committed to a state hospital for intensive treatment and monitoring, but this decision was met with mixed emotions. For some, it was a recognition of her mental health struggles. For others, it was an insufficient response to the loss of 2 innocent lives. The judge made it clear that Hall's release would depend on her progress and the evaluation of medical professionals. Upon release, she would be required to continue psychiatric care, take medication, and avoid drugs and alcohol. But even with these measures in place, the pain of this tragedy would never end. The children's father spoke out during the proceedings, asking the court to consider the pain he had endured. He had lost his children in the most unimaginable way.
Now, that's so funny. This father, wait until all of this happened, and he goes to the court, and now he wants to speak out. Where was he when this woman was left alone with those kids? And he was supposed to, wait. Let me go back. Where was his parenting, wanting to be a father and claim his fatherhood when this woman was in jail, supposedly, for the abuse and also endangering the life of these children from the fire? Now, when the children are dead, now he wants to come out and say he needs to be heard or he needs some support because of the pain of losing his children. That is the most, he should be going to jail for the neglect, abandonment, and everything else. And for he could have been played his part as a father to take those kids in custody. Let's listen. Let's go on. Let's listen. I gotta hear what's going on. I gotta hear this.
For him and the rest of the family, the system's failures were glaring. Why had the children been returned to Hall after her 2018 arson conviction? Could this tragedy have been prevented if someone had stepped in sooner? Do you think allowing Hall custody of these children was the mistake made for this tragedy to happen? Let us know what you think in the comments section below. Here are 4 more crime stories that are more shocking than what you just watched. And by the way, if you like the way we bring to you stories or you learned something new today, please like this video.
Okay, I'm done. All right. I want to know what you think. Okay, I want to know what you think. I already said what I already felt. I already, for one, know that those children should have never been returned back to her without supervision. And where was this father before he started claiming about how he's feeling so painful of the fact that what happened to his kids? Why did he neglect her? Why did he abandon those children? Or left them in the care with this woman if he reckoned he had to know something so that he ain't in the relationship no more with her. He knew something. And the family and everything, their part. And somebody should have been going to their house every day to check on her. Or sometimes those kids should have been dropped off every day at the grandmother's house. That's the way I feel. I know down south and everything, that's what we used to do. But my cousin and everything, she dropped her kids off at home at my at grandma's house every single day before she when she was on her way to work. Them children always was dropped off at my grandmother's house, especially during the summertime. They spend the whole day there at grandma's house. And my cousin and everything, she made sure those kids were well kept. So she needed her village and they failed her. I think the village failed her that she came from because her parents and everybody knew that she had some type of mental illness. The boyfriend, the father of the children, he knew she had some type of mental illness. Even though she was a very attractive woman, but people could still see something wasn't right. Beyond her attributes, her physical attributes, people recognized something wasn't right about this woman. I could look at her and tell something wasn't right. She kept the kids too clean. And she only took pictures of them when they looked. I mean, I don't know if she kept them really, really clean. Oh, that's from what I see in the pictures. It looks that way. It looked like she was very happy with her children. Looked like she was being a good mother to her children. And the children seemed like they were happy. Just tell me what you think in the comment section. Thank you for coming in. Like this video. If this is your new time to my channel, welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope that you will subscribe to the channel. So hit that like button. Hit that bell when you subscribe. So whenever I'm come on, you'll get your notification. So with that being said, you all have a blessed and wonderful Saturday night. I just needed to come and put the, to show you the the video that I watched today. But this ain't the original one I watched earlier because it was a little bit, it showed more pictures of her, the children, and stuff of that nature. But leave your comments below, please, and I will hopefully try to explain things to you the best way I know how in my own words of how I felt about the situation and how it could have been prevented. So with that being said, you all have a blessed and wonderful night. Peace.